what you want.
Hello, No Means Nerds,
And
No Means No
you
Thing
getting
listeners,
what you
whatever the fuck you want to be
need.
called this week. This is the No Means Nothing, No Means No Thing podcast. So look, we don't have a regular episode for you today. The three of us have been off on an adventure together in person for the first time ever. We may or may not tell you about some of that at some point. I don't fucking know. But in any event, we have not had time to record. So rather than pull another one of our, oh shit, guys, life's crazy, we can't give an episode bullshit things, all of which has been true in the past, but, we like to throw out the content when we can. We fortunately were sent a very large and wonderful audio file by friend of the podcast, Sean McTierney. I'm sorry, no, it's not. It's Sean McTiernan. Look what a fucking asshole I am. Sorry, Sean. A prolific podcaster himself. I don't know, maybe prolific's not the word. Excellent podcaster is certainly the word. You should check out his podcast, SFULTRA, which is out there right now. I certainly am and am enjoying the fuck out of it. You'll find out by the end of the episode that Sean is very good at this, probably better than we are. So it's a bit of a risk of, in my opinion, putting this out there because, he does it better than we do. But, fuck that. I figured, hey, this deserves to be out there. So we've got an episode for you today. It's just not us. It's a guest episode, as it were, which we're very thankful to have. So, Sean, thank you for this. You guys are going to really enjoy this. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and we're going to slip right into Sean's excellent No Means Nothing guest episode, all to himself. So sit back, pop open whatever kind of drink you got, and enjoy.
The main problem in the world today is most people are servants. They work for someone. You don't have to be a servant. You can work for yourself. And if you have something to offer people, you can give it to them direct. We go and play directly. People give us money directly. They're happy. We're happy. We go off to the next town. That's better than
we're very lucky in that sense.
Yeah, very lucky. And most people have to sit in an office and serve some anonymous company or government or whatever kind of bullshit. They have to be the servant of.
Let go.
Yeah, I think it's if people want to make a political move in their lives, instead of joining a party or finding an ideology, I think the first thing they should do is quit their job. And that means not working for someone else. Work for yourself. Do what you do well and try to use that to make your way. It's harder. It's much harder. But, I mean, it's so easy to do it the other way because that's the way people who have all these resources, they want to make it easy for you to serve them. But you shouldn't do that. In the long run, you waste your life, I think.
Hello. I don't care who I am. I don't think you should either. I'm here to talk about No Means No. This is a podcast about No Means No called No Means No Thing, usually hosted by three experts bringing you through the songs of Canadian power trio. Let's think about that for a while. We will. Canadian power trio No Means No. Post-punk, post-hardcore, fence post. Let's think about it. Canadian power trio No Means No. The podcast is often very rowdy, very ornery, there's a lot of drink taken, but it's still a rigid structure, which kind of fits with No Means No, right? No Means No is a band where there's a lot of kind of trademark Victoria punk glibness and just lying and jokes and mischief and yo-ho-ho-ness. But they are very good at playing the right notes at the right time, right? They're extremely technically accomplished musicians, and in a way that it's like, it's not just, Joe Satriani or something. They invented the way they're good. Very few bands do that. The Fall did that. The Ramones did that. A third band, preferably from a different era, so I don't sound 100 fucking years old, did that. But that formal structure undergirds everything. You've got the cement under the bowling alley. Bowling alley? Would that be a particularly anarchic location? Who knows? Anyway, my point is, this podcast is usually that. So it's usually kind of reassuringly structured. You'll notice I'm not one of the hosts, nor am I a very sincere Eastern European person speaking down the phone. So I'm not one of the guest contributors. Who could I be? I'm Sean. It doesn't matter, but that's who I am. And I asked, hey, can I record a whole episode of this on my own? And you're probably thinking, what's this guy's? Was this guy in the band? Well, actually, if you if you looked at a certain poster at a certain time, yes, I was, but that's a different story. But was this guy in the band? Was this guy recording it? No, I just like them. They're just good. And, you know, I'm going to add insult to injury here. I wrote the 1 Week, One Band article about them a million years ago. Have I read that? No, I don't want to. And I've talked about them before in different medium, and I was going to listen to everything. I was going to listen to every single song and be like, okay, let's put it together. And then I thought, no, right, let's not do that because, first of all, that would mean I'd have to listen to the Jello Biafra album, breaking my hilarious streak of never listening to my favourite bands, probably one of their most prominent albums overall. Pound off in the comments. But it also, it's not about me clinically going through this, you know, and being like, this is this. This is a band that I have liked, has been my favourite band since I heard 2 songs. It's Catching Up, and then I was like, great. That was in a CD on the front of some magazine when I was 15. I recognised the band name from being carved on the side of a bookshelf or press or something, maybe a cabinet in my school. I think I eventually talked to the guy who probably did that carving on an old podcast of mine, but I wouldn't listen to that either. And I listened to it and I thought, wow, this is the best thing I've ever heard. Listen to its second song. And the second No Means No song I listened to was Cat, Sex and Nazis, because I thought, good title. You know, and I was a keen intellect when I was 15. So I was like, good title. And eventually, you know, I was like, oh man, 7-minute songs where they sampled The Residents and Fate No More. Is this band the new Mr. Bungle? Turns out absolutely not. That's not a representative song at all. But they've been my favourite band since then. Listening to my voice, you're probably like, wow, this guy's youthful. This guy is spry. How old must he be? 17 now? 2 years he spent with this favourite band? No. Wonderful listener, thank you for being so kind. But I am 33 years old, a.k.a. 100, aka the Gizo number, right? I'm 33. Fucking hell. That means my love for No Means No is old enough to walk into a Blockbuster Video in 1995 and rent Terminator. So, you know, that's a big deal, right? No, it isn't. But no, who gives a fuck? And everyone who likes No Means No has liked them longer than me. It seems like even 15-year-olds have a more storied understanding than I do. Just some of my weird No Means No opinions. One is the best No Means No album, followed by what would I say? Like maybe 0 + 2 = 1. Then Dance of the Headless Bourgeoisie. What's he talking about? I know, mad. We're talking about this anyway. But yeah, I've liked them a long time, even though most people have liked them longer than me. But I have thought about them so much in that time that I thought, this podcast, I should, instead of trying to do a science project where I re-listen and I'm like, oh, he says oh my leg in a certain way or whatever, or I count up, you know, I was going to count all of the instances. Here's an example of something I was going to do, right, in my science project that I didn't, by the way. I haven't done my homework, right? Because I told Matt, who you'll recognize from the podcast, I was like, hey, let me lay this out for you. Just me talking for like ages about No Means No. And he said, sure. That was in January. The first week of January. I'd just been laid off. The second time in 2 years. Don't work for startups, my advice to you. But it's not that now. I record this, right? No jokes. Don't want any comments. I record this on St. Patrick's Day. I'm not celebrating it, but you may notice by my tone of voice that I am from Kilkenny in Ireland. A No Means No stronghold. Lots of people like them there. But I'm late, right? But one of the homeworks I didn't do was I was going to count up all of the times in No Means No lyrics that the word you is said. I'm going to do some rough back of the back of the beer mat. Why not say beer mat? Like, hey, I don't really drink anymore, but like, beer mat, like, yeah, it's cool, right? Anyway, back of the beer mat, and I'm going to say, looking at my science here, it's a lot. The answer is a lot. The word you is used far more in No Means No songs. Like, Prince uses the word you a lot, but it's usually like about how he wants to make it which or whatever. Is Prince better than No Means No? Yes, but not for me, but yes in general. Anyway, that seems like a fruitless alley. But there's lots of you, and there's lots of addressing people, and there's lots of talking directly to people. And I have had the lads, right, for the lads in various different iterations. Sometimes there's another lad there who also plays drums. They've been talking to me for 18 years, and I've been going, hey, good idea. I've been listening to these lyrics for 18 years. And so why I thought, now, counting all the U's, something like, the end is nothing and you begin with nothing much. It's like, there are lines where you think, oh, I'm just being called an asshole. It's probably, where Rob literally, calls you a dickhead or whatever. But there are lines when you're like, what? Why is everything in like the second person, right? Like, even the fact that it's a second person thing, right? Even the fact that I've been like, it's a 3-person band, and there being so much in the second person. No Means No as such is like this so much that I sometimes think, is that on purpose? Have I lost my mind, or is this another weird? Or if you spoke to Rob, would he say something like, get that guy away from me? I don't remember why I wrote any of the songs. Or Andy or John, or Tom, indeed. I think, apart from Andy, who I would love to meet, I've shaken all of their hands. They probably remember this. This is probably when they're writing the book about No Means No, which I'm told they've written. I hope to read it one day. I'm on this book buying ban because of structural integrity of my house. But, when they talk about their career, I'm sure they're like, there was this Irish guy and he just seemed so annoying. Anyway, you is use, you broke me, but I live. Like, and they're stories, right? These songs are all stories, in the same way that, like, I've been listening to a lot of The Fall recently. That's actually where I kind of parallel thinking with this podcast, right? There's a book called You Must Get Them All, which is based on a website where a guy picked 5 Fall songs at random and wrote about them until I think he wrote about them all. And then he reformatted that book into a song-by-song history of the band. And it's really contradictory. Actually, no, more so that both the drummer and the bass player have written books. The kind of around the time of Hex and Dunction Hour. Indeed, one of them is just about that album, about the band. They're good, right? They're good books. But one of the things they explore in it is Marky Smith, who's the lead singer of The Fall, and who people say is the kind of, The Fall is just Marky Smith and other people. I would urge you to read a book by one of those other people because they contributed a lot too. But they talk about Marky Smith as a storyteller, right? And he's got this. There's this thing where it's like, oh yeah, he always wanted to write a book, which is kind of very funny because they all have some degree of bitterness towards him. They say he didn't have the discipline. Now, I wouldn't accuse No Means No of not having any discipline. You don't tour that much if you don't have any discipline, but the sense of them as a storyteller, they use always, it usually starts out as a story or whatever sometimes. Then sometimes there's like, the world, you know what they say, the world doesn't end in a day. Probably got the lyrics wrong. This is the thing now, that I'm going to start getting like words wrong because it's just in my head all the time. The world wasn't built in a day. But yeah, it's like there's just this way of conjuring what they use to the word you to really pummel you, right? There's another interesting thing about No Means No. Hey, this is just my thing now. I'm just being like, there's another interesting about No Means No, but there is that like people will either talk about the music or the lyrics, or sometimes both. If there's that's kind of what's good about the podcast is you've got somebody who talks mostly about the lyrics, somebody that talks mostly about the music, and somebody that is content to kind of go between both. That's a very, very accurate of the kind of exploration of the band, because there are people that treat No Means No lyrics like, okay, this is going to be slightly controversial. I know that the median age of this podcast listenership is like 50, right? So I'm just joking. Hey, I'm just joking, but also, let's face it. So this might rustle a few jimmies, but there's people that treat the lyrics of No Means No like Frank Zappa songs, where they're like, yeah, that's just a guy like talking about farts or whatever, over polyrhythms, and they're playing in 7/8, and oh man, the bass. Like, that's one set of people. And then there are freaks like me who are like, at my wedding, like, not really, but almost had to be talked out of being like, I picked up a woman in the parking lot of the local Safeway, like, had to be, have all of these things in my head so much that, like, God and death and you, like, it's just, it has embedded itself into my mind so much that, again, you appears, that even the references, even the fact that, like, there's this phenomenon, right, among people my age, I know, is where they will, you've seen Simpsons references before they had seen the actual show. I'm assuming no young people watch The Simpsons now or whatever, but there's definitely, I find, people like me that I'm about as old as The Simpsons, I think almost literally, and that who grew up with it I don't really believe in the phrase growing up with pop. You'll never hear me say I grew up with No Means No. I grew evil because of No Means No. And then I grew better because of those same songs. Anyway, but they see the reference before they see the actual, source material. So they're robbed of the joy of seeing, the HMS Pinafore for the first time or whatever. And similarly, I couldn't believe the first time I found the origin of Kill Everyone Now. I couldn't believe that there was like a No Means No song that referenced something. Never mind Now It's Dark, which is just like David Lynch, personal friend, David Lynch worship or whatever. But like, and like David Lynch, obviously like an influence, whatever. But I was so serious about this fucking band that, Kill Everyone Out, I was like, is that just parallel thinking? Plastic. But I couldn't believe that there was a song that would make reference to something else. Because to me, right, initially, No Means No was a smooth obsidian wall. Not really obsidian. So No Means No is more like, okay, so in Peru, right, they have these walls. Tourists love to take pictures of them. I know because I was one at some stage. And they are constructed out of different size, all these different size kind of bricks. And the thing about them is they all fit together perfectly, so much so, unlike these walls in Ireland that they have to like keep people away from, that they won't fall over between fields. But these walls in Peru, you can't even fit. And I always thought it was very apt considering how profitable these walls are. You can't fit a credit card between the gaps in the walls. And initially, for years, No Means No felt like that to me. It didn't feel like it was made by, so instead of feeling like music made by people, it felt like, in a good way, mental illness, right? So, people are very down on mental illness these days. People are like, oh, this mental health. I don't know. I don't believe in mental health. Just joking. Or am I? But who knows? Who cares? But it's like mental illness, where it's a entire context. Now, you might not have the same experience of mental illness than I do, but that's the same as No Means No, right? Anyway, so it's like mental illness in that a whole context arrives in your head at once, right? And or this way, and there are recognizable interrelations between people as all, but it's like this thing just appears wholesale. It can come on slowly, but still, it's a it's like a fucking, what do they call those? Airstream trailers directly in your fucking brain, Like, it's like, oh God, I'm opening the fucking box and now I'm going to go through all the mash. You're like Charlie Chaplin in the one with the gears that everyone always references. For cinema expert. But, you think, like, you just listen to these songs and you think, even though the live versions are better, and I have been very privileged that YouTube started the same year I got into No Means No. So I have always been able to see live footage. I saw them live a bunch of times too. Hey, guess what? I lived in Canada for 3 months, so I could see them live 5 times. That's a reflection on me. They even though them playing live, but the sound of the music, like, I played bass at the time and I did recognize the bass was good, but I never tried to play in No Means No, I'm pretty sure, and I never suggested my band sound like them. And I never even, didn't even strike me as an aspirational thing. Like, that would be like saying, hey, one day I want to go out and if I practice really hard, I'll become a Chrysler LeBaron. Now, whatever you think of Chrysler LeBarons, that's not going to happen. And it was the same for me. They didn't feel like a band initially. They felt like a force. It was like discovering, like, when you read Borges stories, right? And you're like, this Jorge Luis Borges, right? Jorge Luis Borges. Wow, this guy's read a book. Anyway, sorry, what a dickhead. But you read Borges stories and you're like, this always existed, right? You read, like, what is it, Death in the Compass, and you're like, surely, like, this expresses an idea, so this always have to. A guy didn't sit down and dictate these stories, and he did, and you're like, and it's just because there's such a cosmology of lyrics, right? And remember, very little No Means No new stuff came out. The 2 EPs and All Roads Lead to Auschwitz. Very little new stuff came out after I was into them. So they had built up all these decades of lyrics and music and ideas coming back in, like the way the bass interacts with the guitar and everything like that. Like, I was getting into, like, Gang of Four and Big Black and, like, all those pig fuck bands. But the way Andy uses feedback felt to me, I never thought of other bands, right? When people say, like, No Means No have, like, the Stranglers bass sound, or how they do the Gang of Four guitars, didn't occur to me. I'm sure all of the members would be more than happy to tell you. I mean, they literally have a band where they pretend to be the Eagles, just joking, the Ramones, please, no emails, where they do the Ramones but hockey. So I get it, and I think that, I've seen them cover the Undertones, which was the first time ever I've experienced national pride, even though John introduced it as this is the song an Irishman wrote about a Canadian. He also did a big speech at a Hanson Brothers gig about You've Got a Beer with a Castle on It, which it turns out is Smithwick's, from Smithwick's, which Americans called Smithwick's, and Canadians probably called Smithwick's A. But No Means No didn't sound like a band to me. They were like, I didn't think of other bands. I wasn't like, because especially at that age, you're like influence spotting because you want to be like, gotcha, which is a real shame because now that I'm 33, every band I hear, I involuntarily go, but that just sounds like this, like any, like fucking, like, people are really excited about Black Midi now. They're like, oh, Black Midi, or like Font. It just sounds like The Fall, but shit. Like Primus The Fall, no thank you, which is bad, right? Because a 16-year-old is hearing Black Midi and they're like, amazing, polyrhythms or whatever. Music is not for me anymore. That's why. And that's how music should be. Electrified guitars and choruses and stuff should not be designed for 33-year-olds with bad backs to rock out to. However, that didn't stop me when I was an asshole teenager from also being like, oh, that's just this or whatever. But I never ever identified No Means No as that's just this. When I listened to, like, Dark Ages, I was just like, I think it was, like the go to sleep bit of Dark Ages. I was like, no music sounds like this. This doesn't, I could feel like, you know, the fucking the button pushers all work night shifts, and the misdemeanors seem so ghastly. Like the Eastern comrades find out much too late. I always thought that was a funny line, because if you read about intelligence, the Eastern comrades are way ahead of North America. Anyway, locked in circuits bathed in silicone is one of those lines where you're like, did Don DeLillo say this in a novel? What the fuck? How is this in a song? But you listen to it and you're like, it is the end of the world. Like the day everything became nothing, right? I remember listening to that when I was 15 and I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out what this song means, right? Because, you know, and I was like, okay, it's a story, and like, but it's about, what is it about? You know, and now I'm like, yeah, that is, if the world is going to die, it's just people are just going to give up. The day everything became nothing is that live version with those dueling guitars. I heard that and I was like, no band can do this. This is not a band. This is somebody receiving the information and beaming the information directly into my frontal lobe, you know. It's weird being a Bob. I'll get used to it. I guess I'll fucking have to. It's just, that's a perfect Twilight Zone ending, right? Rob just did that at the end of a fucking song, and the live saying the word fucking it means totally different. Something to notice, or something I've noticed, is sometimes live versions come a lot more ferocious. Now that sounds really obvious, right? Of course, they're energized, they're whatever. I think it's because they're often quite mad at something to do with the venue. I can see there is a look. First of all, okay, if you watch a lot of No Means No YouTube videos, which I assume you do, there is a look Rob gets when he fucks up a note. Now, just to be clear, Rob Wright is the greatest bass player of all time. I genuinely believe this. He is my favorite artist ever, tied with Ramel Z probably for just favorite artist in any medium ever. I'm not going to get a big tattoo of Rob. I do have a tattoo of Ramel Z, but anyway, but when he fucks up a note or whatever, which is fine, just to be clear, he's playing the greatest bass lines ever written, indisputably. Sorry to, I don't know, sorry to Flea. And I'm trying to, he's Jaco Pastorius. You tried, but when he fucks up a note, right, he gets this real mad face, and I remember, or I don't remember, every time I feel like the TV is mad. Like somewhere between the TV and my parents are mad. It feels like apocalyptic, which is funny because like then he plays all the right, he laughs usually, but yeah, there's this there's this ferocity, right, that comes across in their live stuff, like, which means stuff like, okay, it's weird being a Bob, I'll get used to it, I guess I'll fucking have to. Or again on Live and Cuddly, where somebody's, Andy opens with this big a cappella thing and goes, it's the same fucking guy in the middle of it. I ripped off the stage banter, by the way, from Live and Cuddly so much when I was young. I used to, like anything in class, where there was a decision in a group project, I'd take a vote and then I'd say, too bad, this is not a fucking democracy. Like annoying, right? This is the thing. If you like No Means No when you're a teenager, and I was, I'm sure people can attest in the No Means No community, I was incredibly annoying because I was trying to affect the world-weary attitudes of an extremely intense, 40-year-old Canadian man whose life experience shares very little with mine. And still, I had to tap into it because to me, it wasn't a band. Even though they're the most definitionally hard hat lunch pail band in the world. I saw them in 2006 or something. John, who had been in No Means No at that stage for almost, let's do the count, like 30 years maybe. Yeah. Slept in the fucking van. Like, and that was not unusual. You know, that was What's New Pussycat. That was every single Tom Jones song you can think of. But that was normal shit. Like, they're the hardest touring band in the world. They're such a, like that quote I put at the top about, you know, you work for yourself and you create, because to me, when Rob said that you work for yourself thing, it's not just, he's not Andrew Tate or whatever, you know, he's not like an influencer saying like, if you form your own LLC, you'll be able to know what Rob and what No Means No is about, right? If you, I know, right? We're at minute 27. When's he going to tell us what No Means No is about? It's about defining your own context, right? It's about absolutely burning a hole in the fucking universe and saying, that's where I go. It's not the Amigara fault, right? That meme that people always put up where the guy's like, this is my hole, this is made just for me, right? From that Junji Ito comic. That's what No Means No fandom can feel like. It's like, oh, this band exists just for me. But I never felt that, right? I loved it, but I felt like I had to, like a bank robber trying to get in to like see the orb, you know, the like pulsating energy orb that is like, no, but like, it's not the Amigara fault. It's not like, you know, this was made just for me. It's like watching a guy stand in front of a mountain and just walk through it and leaving a path of his own silhouette. You know, whoever the three members of the band are at the time. It's that level of just focus and determination. And the thing about focus and determination, and indeed defining your own context, that comes up in that clip is it's often fucking boring. Right? But even though all that existed, even though I knew all that, even though that, I still, even after the first time I saw No Means No, Rob came up to me and said, what's the number of the booter in your country? And I did, you see, in Canada, they call the clamper the booter. And I was 18, and all I knew was my favourite man in the whole world was really mad and shouting at me. And I didn't know what to say. He came up afterwards and he apologised. If my van was clamped and I saw an 18-year-old who refused to give me the answers I needed, I would have simply kicked him in half. So I really empathise. I don't blame him, or I'm not mad. But I talk about the mixture. That's probably why I get the mixture between the TV and the parent feeling. But even though I knew all this, still, now, right, I'm old. Back's fucked. You know, I'm talking to you through a microphone that I talk to other people on the internet about films and books and shit, and people listen, and I have developed my own context, right? I've day-glow abortions. I am my own god now, you know, like I've created my own context. I still think of No Means No as a force, as like a mental state, as like a thing, because you listen to like, you know, these recordings, and they have the really cold pseudo Martin Hannett recordings of like, you know, in like Small Parts Isolated and Destroyed, where it feels like everything is very separate. And then there's like The Fall, which to me, probably wrong, it probably is quite dry, but still, like, they kind of, you know, not The Fall, sorry, that's my favourite song on the album, but 0 + 2 = 1, which feels like fucking Room Tone, the album, right? It feels really, like, probably, it is quite dry and quite wiry, but it feels so live, right, in a way that Everything Became Nothing doesn't. Across all of that, like, it's just this force, you know, and these stories, this is the thing, like, you hear, like, you hear something like This Story Must Be Told, and you're like, oh, is this a cover of a traditional song or something? It's like, no, this guy sat down to write a rock song and wrote, like, you know, he laughed, he cried, he said, I'd kill myself if I was still alive, reaming her out with a tongue like sand, cursing in a language that nobody understand. There she blows, he turned and he cried, pointing to the centre of an empty sky. This is a band. There's like a chorus and shit in that song, and he's just laying it all out there, man. Like, you know, like it's just, and I realize I'm talking a lot about Rob, right? This is typical. If you have a band with a small number of members, you pick your favorite member and you become boring about them. Thing about this is, though, the other members of the band are as important, right? And not as important as in like The Fall, where it's like, hey, remember those guys' names. John Wright's the best drummer ever. And like, look, when I call Rob the best drummer ever. Somebody's going to be like, what about Trey Spruance? Get a fucking life. But, you know, somebody, you know, you could argue there are technically better bass players or whatever. And you could argue that, oh, lyrics or, you know, Rob's good, but he never wrote 2112 for all the Randian objectivists in the audience. But, like, you can't deny John Wright playing the drums, right? It's such a privilege to listen to, because I would, you know, you think of a band that is around for with no change in drummer for as many years as they were, and it begs sentences like, it's great to watch him develop as a drummer, but no, it's not like that. It's like standing in the fucking little gallery in the Louvre, not in the Louvre, it's in the other one, Musée Français in Paris. And there was this little room when I was there, and it had like 12 Van Goghs or something in it. And you're like, every time this motherfucker just hit after hit, and they're different, and they're all, you know, like, it's like, oh, you know what it's like, actually, Derek Jarman, right, is this multidisciplinary artist, directed fantastic films and Jubilee, which is a shit film, don't watch it, Toy is in it. He did this he was an amazing painter, he was an amazing costume designer, he did everything, right? And I went to a gallery show that was about Derek Jarman. It had every single thing he did in it, and simultaneously they were showing, or parallel to this or whatever, they were showing every film he did in the local cinema. So I had this big Derek Jarman bomb of fucking hell, this guy did everything. Getting into No Means No is like that, but the drums, where you're like, this guy can do this as well, and this, and this also. He's gonna play like Long Days. You see a live video of Long Days, and you're like, it's like watching somebody it's like watching pure drumming enter a kaleidoscope and come out of a man's hands just like nothing at all. There's a video that you can definitely find of this story getting mixed up here. Long Days. I wasted them. I wasted them away is a good lyric, but when Rob just says I wasted them, fucked up, right? Really, really, really hit, like, cuts my head off every time. But that song would not work, that bass line would not work if you didn't have the information playing the drums, right? Like, it's extraordinary. He plays a different phrase every single time in that song. It feels like, it definitely is. It's a technical, like this is this live version, which you can definitely find. Don't be lazy. Come on, it's on YouTube. And it's just like you're watching, you're like, how can, and then you find out about the Hanson brothers, and you're like, this too, you can do you're the guy who inherited who picked up the fucking, picked up the Joey Ramone leather glove from the stone like Excalibur, and you can also do this. Fuck off. You're singing at the same time. Annoying. So, but it's not just that. Like, the fact he does vocals, and the vocals are great. I've always thought it was interesting, by the way, and this comes back to the fact that No Means No was like this impregnable wall, and still is, right, for me, is that when you listen to this, now I probably can at this stage because I'm weird enough, but I remember somebody else saying this on the forum or whatever, and I think that you can't sometimes tell if it's John or if it's Andy, but when John and Rob sing together, it's like the Louvin brothers, right? They have the harmony that siblings can do and nobody else can do, but there is also this overwhelming Victorianness that they all have, this dry-aged Canadian sneer that pervades everything. But yeah, it's just extraordinary. Like, John's playing is so, you can, it's like a clenched fist, right? Like it's just like, yeah, like there's all these little moments and everything, and he constantly is working. It feels like, it doesn't feel like he's doing, like, when you hear other solos for drummers, you're like, impressive, cool, that's good. But I feel like Dale Crover kind of has this too, where it's like, this guy's just like, what can I do to make the song great? I'll just do some of this. and I know what to do, and like is so skilled that it's like he's not even thinking about it. It's just like, yeah, it makes sense to play incredible thing you've never heard before here for a bit. Oh, this I'll just hit the bass drum for a while. It's no big deal. Like, and I know that's not how they write songs. Save your letters, right? I don't give a fuck. Like it's extraordinary, right? And it's the most welcoming part. Like, I think his excitement, Andy and Tom's guitar is very, what would you say? Like Andy especially, and Andy on stage, and so it's kind of preposterous because Andy's like a very nice man, and like even listen, I mean, nobody's made it this far. If you've made it this far, right? I imagine there's like a person who's made it this far. Let strangers on a train contact me. I've got a murder I need to commit. I'll do your murder, if there is one person left. But Andy has this sort of like, what would you say, like David Cronenberg, blank. Again, kind of maple leaf sneer. No, that's, you see, treating Canada like a joke. They're allowed to do it. You're not allowed to do it. It's a complicated thing. But it goes with this playing that again doesn't feel like a guy channeling, you know, the way like say Steve Albini's guitar. It's a guy slashing around, but he still has underneath all of that, as he explained with a cover version, he's still kind of doing the ZZ Top thing, right? And he's sort of fucking around with the ZZ Top thing. Gang of Four, just a guy playing funk parts a lot of the time, but with a pedal. And then there's Anthrax, and you know, which is it was a kind of a noise thing. But Andy feels like, because they set the tone of bass and drums so steadily, and anybody who likes any major dude will tell you this. Andy on No Means No Songs feels like the fucking weather, you know. Like, it doesn't feel like a guitar. It's like again like a force, like a kind of an oppositional force that changes how the players work, you know, like changes the game, and like just and his vocals are so different, and so like you listen to Rob, and Rob sounds like, I mean, he sounds like Mr. Wrong because he is Mr. Wrong, but he sounds like just okay. So Rob, I don't know if this makes sense. Rob is a Charles Willeford. Rob is a Richard Stark bad guy. Total clarity, total purpose, total disinterest in your thing, but knows you completely. Whereas when Andy's singing, it's like a Jim Thompson novel where you're like, this guy's fucked up. I can't help. It's getting worse, you know. And like, but his guitar, Andy's guitar, like, is just like, the weather is the best way I have of describing it. His guitar isn't just good, it's inclement, right? You know, like, it's not thunderous in the terms of what it sounds like. That's what he's doing. And again, right, I can't compare it to like other guitarists. I have to compare it to like how being alive feels, because that's what the band is. But I do still, as special as this seems to me, one of the big things about No Means No, and definitely something I've bought into my own let's be generous and call it work, is that it's a joke you can't be in on, right? It is to an extent, like, I always make fun of being told by the former merch guy, that John Chedsey, that I shouldn't interpret lyrics to be autobiographical because Rob said they weren't once. I don't know if you've ever heard how much the word lies comes up in No Means No Songs, and how the idea of truth is mocked, and the fact that a guy saying don't interpret these songs is like the thing I would say if somebody tried to, you know, suddenly come up and say, well, this is what this means. If I never wanted to be asked a question in an interview, that's certainly what I'd say. But I make fun of, you know, like, of the fact that we, you know, this thing, it's almost like a conversation ender, you know. We're never going to know why he says my left leg is numb, I can't feel my tongue, you know, she cheats me in the rape, you know. All that pain and heartache was just my foolish pride. We're never going to know what the rape means, you know, like that's the vibe that sometimes comes across. But there is an element of that. No means no. I think it's really, really important that even though they make you feel like they're there, right, there is that fantastic thing of when you can hear them screaming off mic. Hands down, my favorite thing a band does. It's again, just because I've been listening to a lot of The Fall, Sparta FC, the Peel version, has this. There's this. Well, I think it's on a lot of the versions of it, but they have this vocal that comes in at the end, where it feels like the other members of the band trying to get Marky Smith on the right path by singing a different song, but it feels very real. And there's a lot of bits on Hex and Dunction Hour where you can hear people like talking in the background and stuff and like setting up, and that feeling they have of like where, you know, I'm struggling to describe insight into the creative process. I'm trying not to cry, or trying not to tear up at this. But the end of I Can't Stop Talking, where there's that like euphoric ending, and you can hear them shouting. It's just, it's an amazing. It feels incredible. You know, the music feels incredible, but with the lyrics, but with the aesthetic, it's a joke you can't be in on. And that's really, really, that's a particular type of antagonism, especially when you fill a song with so many songs addressed to you. Now, I know he's a character and all this. He's a character. I know he's a character. I'm a character right now. Do you think I actually sound like this? In reality, I speak with a thick Jamaican accent. Everybody puts a character on, right? But for everything. This is the thing. This is the thing about No Means No. I can't understand the world without filtering to it. So I just told you everyone is lying all the time. You know, like No Means No songs. That's probably weird. But a band with this much unit, this much is pointing the finger. And that this is the thing, when it brings you in, when there's a song like I Need You, it's completely destabilizing because you're like, this is too much, and it's still directed at me, you know, it's still, but it's not directed at me, you know, me. But it's very hard to explain. But they're both this is the other important, I was about to say, playing in like no one else to the fucking No Means No thing. I was about to sincerely say to you, they're everything and nothing, because two guys in a band called Right would release an album called Wrong, and it's such an obvious pun, no one ever says it. It reminds me when I was in school and I had a teacher called Miss Gay, and that's such a open goal that for the homophobic 2000, where like I think they were like inventing new kinds of homophobia every couple of weeks in the 2000s, that even none of the complete asshole kids I went to school with ever made jokes about it, because having a teacher called Miss Gay, I mean, there's not a lot of place you can go, you know. One guy once called her Miss Homosexual, inventive if nothing else, but you know, two rights making a wrong is that's fucked up, right? That they put that in, like, and you know, it's so fucking funny. But all that thing about Rob, and that thing about the band, and the thing about, well, in this song, in this band, the bass is the lead, and the guitar provides the background, and the drums are playing every possible drum iteration at once, somehow also tastefully, you know, and it's just, again, it's a force, right? It's this self-contradictory thing. Like all these lyrics, all of the lyrics and all of the way the songs are presented, and even the albums, they wind around each other and they coil around you. They lend themselves so much to exhaustive listening that I remember, again, when I was like 15 and I'd been into them for like, you know, 6 weeks or something, which at the time was, you know, feels like a major artistic period, you know, for being a 15-year-old. And I remember a guy I was in a band with being like, oh, you don't want to wear them out, you know, you don't want to just keep listening to them till you're sick of them. Like happens to the Pixies. I don't know if you've ever listened to the Pixies a lot, or the Smiths, but fucking hell, those are bands you can burn out on fast. You know, suddenly you're knee deep in fucking Morrissey solo albums where he's like just being racist over music, and you're like, I guess this is good as well. Anyway, but you burn out on bands. It's totally natural. You can't listen to Unwound forever. That's no skin off Unwound's nose. You can still buy the box set, but I haven't worn No Means No out yet. I still get moments. I went years preferring the later stuff to the early stuff, which is, if you say that to some nerds, they go absolutely doolally, right? They go apeshit bonkers, because you're like, what do you mean you don't like the old? It's not that I didn't like, I just preferred the new stuff. And then on a visit to Canada, albeit fittingly the wrong side of Canada, a few years ago, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, for reasons I still don't understand, I put on Mama, which I had barely listened to even then, even after 10 years of loving the band. And I was like, holy shit, this album is incredible. And then I spent like months listening to Rich Guns, and I had heard Rich Guns. I had seen them play Rich Guns live on YouTube in the very funny video where like John is dressed like he's going to church. And Rob is like really helium high voice or whatever, because he was only 29 at the time or whatever. But incidentally, that's one of those videos where you watch and you're like, the earliest stuff possible, but virtuoso musicians, what are they like? Oh, John is apparently as good. What? Very confusing. But I had heard those songs before, and then I just heard Everything They Have Is Yours, Las Putas. We just want to stay in our stately homes. The chairs on which we sit are made of human bones. That is late Harold Pinter, right? And I heard that, and I was like, I'm the biggest fan of this band in the world. I'm not. I bet you some guy in fucking Oh Mimi or some guy. I really, really wanted to say a funny Canadian town there. I was dying to say something funny, and I can't remember what's the name of the fucking band named after the small Canadian town. Oh, near Vancouver. I never remember it. Anyway, desperately want to say that. Some guy there is, or actually no, sorry, it's No Means No. So it's some guy in Poland is the real big fan. What an awesome thing, by the way. Really, really good for me, because I hate people talking during gigs, but I loved No Means No, and we saw them in Ireland in the late 2000s and early 2010s, when there was, mid 2000s, kind of around, but there was a lot of building in Ireland, and a lot of Eastern European guys came over to work on the buildings. So you went to see No Means No in Dublin, and instead of a load of dickheads that wanted to talk through everything, like most gigs I went to, it was like 65% ultra serious Polish people who were there to see the fucking band and had a bit of respect. And I was like, these guys are as serious as I am. And we were all there singing the later songs to the absolute dismay of people that just wanted to hear It's Catching Up or what. Such a cool group, seriously. And as well, I don't know, I think Irish people are a bit like sly about this, like, oh, I only ever got insults from I don't know why I've turned into like fucking Mr. Head Measurer. Oh, this country's like that. I'm doing crowd work halfway through the fucking thing. Oh, this can't be halfway, come on please. I know, but like, I have been stopped by more guys with like, like Eastern European accents being like, No Means No, great t-shirt, really intense, great t-shirt, just great. But the thing about them is that they surface all the time for me. I'm never gonna, you know what it's like to never have a band that wears out, and I mean, I can do this now. I was going to listen to all the songs and of all different facts, and I will read you the notes that I have. There are 3 notes that I made when I first wanted to do this project. The first note is, this is a song about the history of the world. I do not note the song, and you know what? Can you think of a No Means No song you couldn't plausibly say this is about the history of the world? That's why they're fucking No Means No. Big dick. I get your point. But still, you know, like when I speak, the words I repeat are lost among this roaring, right? You know, like that's the thing, right? If you want to take the lyrics real seriously, you're like, that's a great song about depression. But if you think about, you know, like I would say, if you give my life, you're the you in the song, right? Like the river, I listened to it for years and I was like, this is about me being depressed. You know, usual depressed guy shit. But now that I'm older and I've had these things called feelings for a while, I developed through sheer force of will and a lot of downtime, a little bit of empathy. I'm like, oh, this isn't like, this is about someone else. And do you know what it's like to write a sad rock song? Like, sure, okay, I'm going to have to modify that a little, because the first thing that came into my head was like, well, Cats in the Cradle is a song or a sad rock song about someone else. Why, are you going to give a big fucking emotion? No. I'm the same as you, son. I want to be just like you. But no, that's me singing the Jungle Book. Anyway, it's not, you know what it's like to write a sad rock song that eventually reveals itself. That is so viscerally, you can feel like people listen to The River and they just become overwhelmed by it. You know, like they just like it's a big song for a lot of people. I know Jordan on the podcast say like the desperation, because really why I think why people feel that song so profoundly is because it's vulnerability, and you have the character who is the narrator of all of the No Means No songs, no matter who's singing. There is the character being played, but behind that there is the narrator, right? It's a theory I've developed from my fall studies, is that like the character, the narrator, the force of No Means No affects these different characters and these different faces, but there's still, that's the energy, right? Like, and it's displaying vulnerability very, very, and like, look, the two drummers, this is the thing. This is why it's interesting that No Means No has lyrics people and music people, because really, and I know I'm arguing for my interpretation here, but really the whole thing fits together. And even though it's like, you know, I was about to do like mean slap bass. That's not how Rob plays the bass. But even though it's like mechanical enough and precise enough and interlocking, you know, intermezzos or whatever, paradiddles and all that shit, even though like it's finely tuned that you could call it mechanics, you could. And for years my explanation of No Means No was like the machinery, right? But what happens when you like leave, when you like zoom out from machinery, like you see a tank, and a tank is a symbol, right? You see a factory or something. Like, so No Means No is that, right? It's a force, it's an idea, and the music swells so much. Like, listen to The Jungle. They don't have another song like The fucking Jungle. It's this weird, peaceful sci-fi song, just out of nowhere, very beautiful, and just as a matter of course, you know, at the end of it, they explain the band. This is the other thing about No Means No, is that it's kind of this level of control in how the songs defy your expectations and don't defy your expectations, how they twist around you. There is an element of control that, like, plenty of bands have recorded their I'm Sick of Touring song. If this tour doesn't kill you, I will, by Pup, fellow Canadian power trio. There's definitely 4 people in Pup, and I fucked up now. Yeah, there is. There's 4 people in Pup. Anyway, plenty of people have recorded their fuck touring song. Now, I'm given to understand these lyrics could mean anything, but Isolated and Destroyed is not just about touring. It's about existing in the punk ecosystem as somebody who has taken the origins of punk and interpreted them very differently from a lot of people they met, and is doing something parallel to the original punk attitude and using the same venues and playing with the same people sometimes, but is not that, you know, like is just so, like, it's an escape from context, right? Because so many No Means No songs are about setting and controlling context, and like the jungle, the bass is the love I feel in my heart, the guitar you see is my learning tree, the drums are the drums, come on man, the drums are the sound that you heard from the start, they're the tool of the trade, the craft and the art. I've been listening to No Means No again long enough that my listening to No Means No could rent Texas Chainsaw Massacre in a Blockbuster in 1997, and I haven't come up with a better description of the band than the bass is the love I feel in my heart, the guitar you see is my learning tree, the drums are the sound that you heard from the start, they're the tools of the trade, of the craft, of the art. But when will I sail across the seas, and what message will fly on the wind to me? What will I see in the smoke and sparks? When and when will I play my part in the jungle? So the first half of that has, I've always said, oh, that's the best description of No Means No. Maybe the second half is, though. Maybe this yearning, maybe this idea of a secret world under the world and all of this, and this force out there, right? This musical force and this endlessly touring, endlessly present, very funny, making your dad jokes when they play live force is out there. And you can't, the important thing is you can't fully understand it. You can strive so much, but it's not asking your permission. No Means No, the idea, not asking your permission, and it's not asking for, it's not welcoming you in, it's not running a fucking fan club for itself, it's purposely alienating. People hate that. I love it. And again, I feel like I poured this band into my brain at a very specific time. And look, I understand that there's a guy who heard, you know, Level 42 when he was 15, and he's giving this speech on the Mark King podcast. I get that that everybody likes the music they liked when they were 15, especially when they're 33 and unemployed and being like, oh, I'll stick on one, and actually get jealous of the guy in Graveyard Shift because he's got a fucking job. Like, who would sing a song about how not how great it is to be a janitor because there's security or a security person or whatever the character in, and I'm sure there's a fucking theory that it's a Dracula. I support you if that's your theory. Seriously, I do. I'm fine. One being my favorite album though, Graveyard Shift. Maybe Graveyard Shift is the song I'm describing as this is a song about the history of the world, you know? Because like I did say actually, you know what? I've just looked up because I decided because it's No Means No, I'd read the last of my notes first. I've just looked up, and in fact, the middle note, the C, if you like, is about Graveyard Shift. Let's see what the note says. The reason music critics say that Martin Hannett, I referenced him earlier, is the producer of Joy Division and Magazine and a lot of these things. And his big thing was mixing, rather than kind of would record kind of very live and then mix things and kind of creating big in post-production. So like not very No Means No really, apart from obviously Cat, Sex and Nazis. Boy Did They Call Me Mr. Happy, the album, but which contains my favourite song, by the way, my favourite song by definition, Madison Death. Especially, that's a great thing about No Means No, by the way, just before we get to the Graveyard Shift thing, that No Means No played Madison Death until they got it right. Now, Ghosts is another famous one, and they've changed Ghosts a lot. What is it time to being about time, which is a shame because I think my favourite lyric of anything in the whole world, let's do the favourites and get them out of the way. My favourite lyric in the whole world is there's no castle without ghosts, the long climb into thin air. Nobody passes the test of time. Like that's in a fucking rocks. They sound checked and played that, and then guys got up afterwards and was like, this is Winona's Big Brown Beaver. That's the context that happened in. Anyway, Graveyard Shift, Martin Hannett. why Martin Hannett was a genius, or what Tony Wilson, who another big figure in my life of coming up with ways of being a complete wanker, who will talk for an hour uninterrupted about a band. And again, if you're listening right now, it really is just the two of us. And I think, like, you know, I think we could, what are we going to do? Should we go to each other's weddings? I'm already married, so I didn't invite you to mine. But I assume if the one person who's left listening right now, if you want me to come to yours, pay for the flights, I'll come. You know, I'll attend a bris. I'll do whatever. You know, I think if you've made it this far, well done. But the reason Martin Hannett was a genius, the thing that Tony Wilson said, is that he got one of the first delay circuits, not even pedals, I think, in production. And if you got an effect, certainly if I got an effect and I would turn it all the way up, I'd be like, where's 11 on this thing, right guys? Given the fucking big 2 thumbs Spinal Tap time. But what Martin Hannett did was turn it all the way down. So, and it gave that kind of watery graveyard feeling to that No Means No album. That's the t-shirt now with about tacos or whatever, that everybody likes. And he heard that when it was not possible for any other human being to hear that. And that's pretty cool. That restraint is what Graveyard Shift feels like. It's what All of One feels like. My favourite No Means No song. There is explosions of... But it's almost... They treat technique and they treat musicianship in it like percussion itself. Or like kind of... Like theatrically. Like a force rather than a kind of the way the loping kind of bass lines and the, like, I would say again, another Marky Smith quote. You can tell the fall is really getting to me. It really actually opened a new way of thinking about No Means No to me, so why not? Marky Smith said, and I think this explains, this is my one-line review of One, the album. It's not repetition, it's discipline. That's it. I don't need to say anything more. Well, I'll amend that slightly. It's not repetition, it's discipline. They really shouldn't have done the beat on the Brat cover. Look, I'll put up my hands. You know, I would say even ethically, you can't have a favourite album of all time if you don't hate one of the songs. That's not how life works. Oh, you like every song in an album? Fucking, well, you live in a cartoon? Anyway, that is, I would think that in the Graveyard Shift, if you take the restraint that in that song Graveyard Shift, there is this writer called Eugene Martin who writes with the same kind of restraint. And I often think of the lyrics, the way the lyrics get pared down and like made mysterious in later No Means No is like Gordon Lish editing, right? So Gordon Lish is this famous literary editor who edited all these people, most famously Raymond Carver, and he would like do things like cut out whole paragraphs, cut sentences in half, take a sentence in the middle of the story and put it at the end. He was really, really, really a creative participant. His own writing is impenetrable, I find. Now, in a good way, I was about to say nobody likes to be penetrated. That's wrong, demonstrably so. But in a good way, his writing is very, very difficult. It's like Gertrude Stein, where you're like, yeah, I mean, it's good that this exists because somewhere out there somebody has understood this and is doing something interesting with it. There's no hope for me. But Gordon Lish and that kind of feeling of taking a story and turning it into a beam of energy that burns and that enlightens, right? Okay, like that's the thing that No Means No lyrics do later, No Means No lyrics. And I think Graveyard Shift is like Eugene Martin in that it's really pared down, and Eugene Martin was edited by Gordon Lish. And the third note I have is about what we've talked about already, which is the screaming in the studio background. And it reminded me of Missy Elliott, because when I was getting into music first, so long ago, Missy Elliott and Timbaland, which was very complicated drums, lots of weird mouth noises, and twisting kind of recognizable pop structures and what you wouldn't expect. And that was like mainstream pop music. And that's just No Means No, right? Like that, like there are a lot of things in common between No Means, and I know that, again, the median age here, what are we talking, like 75 people listening to this? No offense, guys, I'm old too now, you know? I'm past 30, so music is no longer for me. I'm one of you, but I'm just saying liking Missy Elliott a lot was a great setup for liking No Means No. Have you heard a more No Means No choice in a pop song than the baby Timbaland put in that Aaliyah song? That is such a No Means No choice. And I really appreciated that. And again, that idea of a joke that it didn't get and that commonality I felt with, you know, I said it wasn't influenced by me. I realised the Missy Elliott thing 2 years ago because I eventually started thinking, what do No Means No songs sound like? You know, like, and I really have to, it really strikes me when I hear it out of context. Like That Baby was one of the few times I heard someone else make a John Wright decision, or make an Andy Kerr, or make a Tom Holliston choice, you know. Like Tom, like for somebody, it's such, Tom's choices are so extraordinary in that they come out kind of, it's such a weird choice to bring. Again, you're replacing the weather with a guy who can kind of who can embody any genre at all, and who can do, including Andy, right, who can do all that, but whose playing is totally different and really, really, like, it's almost like Tom, I know his albums are, you know, kind of goes for humor a lot, but it's almost like hearing a guy whose natural instinct is tasteful musicianship, and who's chosen as almost as a vocation, who chose to be in a band where it was like, we're doing something a little bit different here. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's not hard. It's complicated what we're doing. You know, like not like that. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, Ford Peer, the music is like that too, where it's like this guy could write 10 power pop songs every 2 months and put them out and be guided by voices, but instead he's like, what if this was in 1712 and I was both the year and the time signature and I was screaming? So yeah, Tom just, yeah, it's amazing. The choice, and like the guitar on one, it's just like, it's so tasteful. It's so on the verge of breaking and snapping, just like every narrator in that album. Have you heard lyrics on a rock album more beautiful than Comrade Are Those Tears I See, like Stars Above the Zouder Z? I haven't. That's in a fucking song by a band that, again, they got off stage and fucking, you know, again, I'm trying to think of the most innocuous big band, you know. I don't want to insult anybody. This is it. I'm old now. I would have just picked everyone's favorite band and said they got up afterwards and were like, you know, hey, you know, but I don't want to insult anyone. I'm too old. I like all their contemporary bands, you know, like where I'm just like, apart from Urge Overkill or shit, they wouldn't really be noise contemporary. I'm just thinking about the early 90s now. Now I'm just like, oh man, remember Fugazi. Anyway, but that sense of alienation carried, and that sense that it's No Means No is a joke you're not in on. I think I've said this before. I don't know if it's like a joke you're not in on. And that's what's fascinating about it, right? Like that's what these songs, especially, you know, when you're young, like I was, as I keep saying, when I first got into them, and even in my early 20s, when I was like, what if I was a person? After I was involved really in the No Means No community, I literally sat down and was like, I have to make myself into a human being. That's why I find it so weird talking about it, because it feels like someone else trying to understand a thing that's designed not to be understood. And I'm talking about that, which is a very No Means No feeling. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been talking directly to you the whole time, which is also a No Means No feeling. Doing my best here. But right at the end of the career, the last time I saw them, the 25th birthday, fortuitous, was in London. So already I was surrounded by the worst people on planet Earth. My apologies, just, you know, England, steer clear, my advice. Little bit of history there with my people and their people. Anyway, look, I'm a quarter English, I can say that. It's all, let's just pretend if there's any English people listening. Although there is nobody listening. That's right, I can say whatever I want. Fuck England. You know, there was a kind of the usual, and it's a fairly, you know, like sensibly aged crowd, you know, like, and there's a few like punk people there and stuff. There's always a few mohawks. I don't know how spiky lads are still into No Means No when they literally have a song being like, don't have a mohawk. doesn't help. Came too late, lads. But anyway, spiky punks, cross punks, other people who eventually became graphic designers as well. They were all there. And as well as that, older gig men, you know, guys who like the next week would be going to see Talk or something, you know, like gig guys, you know, fucking lads who were there and they're like, great, Mudhoney are going to play and then I'm going to see fucking Bell and Sebastian. Giggers, gig men. They were there too, which is fine. You kind of expect to see them at gigs. What the fuck am I talking about? Anyway, Rob comes out to a like dubstep backing track and sings The River. Now, you probably saw this because you probably saw them on tour. Statistically, everybody who's listening to this, and again, as I keep saying, I'm the only person listening to this. So I know for a fact everyone who's listening to this has seen this live, and there are videos of it and stuff. But the fucking vibe in the room, like somebody laughed, somebody looked completely uncomfortable. There was a very, very strange atmosphere when Rob came out and sang over dubstep the song that people are like, this is the song that means the most to me. I think The River was like, I'm sure what happened was the stems were picked by the guy who made the song, whatever. Guess what, I can interpret it whatever way I want. What I saw was a band, and then they played along with it, which I think was really important. They played over it, like Tom did a really, really good guitar improvisation over it. John, obviously, it was a piece of music, so John Wright made the best series of decisions along with Tom anyone could make. But improvising with a dubstep track, which is really difficult because that's not what they're made to do. But I saw a guy at the end of his career when they were in those last tours, they did, you know, they encored with Ramones songs, which if you want to leave people happy, I thought that was the best choice ever. It's like, yeah, we could play a few more. What if we just played some Perfect, right? Perfect. Clone the Ramones the last time around. Why not? But like at the very last hurdle, throwing in a piece of experimentation that stark and being like, you don't fucking know me. You know, I'm not who you think I am. I'm not limited. Like, you need to question yourself once again. You know, and maybe that's because I spend a lot of time listening to that kind of music and stuff, and maybe, but there was such a, and he was doing it completely genuine and very nice. Like Rob, in fact, if you look at live videos, it's like somebody's dad has gotten up to sing at a wedding or make a speech at a wedding. Very genial. It wasn't very confrontational. It wasn't like, you know, when you see Oxbow and that guy comes out of the audience and beats people up or whatever. But like, it's like, guess what? No Means No is whatever we want it to be. And you still can't, we're not like, and look at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame performance. Dressed as Mr. Wrong, piano, acoustic guitar. That's a band that's like, whatever box you have, we're flattening it and we're turning it into a sign and we're writing "fuck you" on it. Not in a mean way, but it's a band that doesn't want to be boxed in, doesn't want to be defined. And the whole band is about, the whole songs, the album art, everything is about a statement that can't make sense, right? It's a statement, it can't resolve itself. And I don't want to go into the more spiritual aspects of No Means No. Smarter people on this podcast than me, you know, have gone into that, you know, and you know, like the idea of duality and where Rob is taking these lyrics from, because that's the thing, right? I said, like, I couldn't believe when Kill Everyone Now was influenced by had took a quote from a John Waters film. I couldn't believe it, you know, but Rob is taking these lyrics from somewhere, like, because that's the element of folk song in No Means No. That's why I said, you know, when you listen to The Story Must Be Told, and you're like, is this song 400 years old? Is there a guy, like, is there a shipwreck with the original lyrics to this somewhere in, out in the water, where these guys grew up? Like, when he interpolates different songs all around the world, people dancing in the street, you know, that sounds so different when he sings it that you're like, what, you know? And even We Care a Lot on fucking Cat, Sex and Nazis. I hadn't heard We Care a Lot. I'd heard Mr. Bungle. I'd heard Fate No More. I think if you were like 13 or 14 and into alternative music, in the 2000s, you had to have like a very nuanced, annoying Mike Patton opinion, but I hadn't heard We Care a Lot, you know, or the Residents thing, or even, you know, on any cover they did, Would We Be Alive? You know, it's funny, both Primus, who I've made fun of several times in this show, and they covered the Residents, and I listened to Residents, and they're fine, but I think it's one of those things where people who are inspired by them are more than that. But like, yeah, hearing those references and stuff, it's like, and as it goes on, you know, like All Road Leads to Auschwitz, which was not the most popular album, I don't think, with some of the fans. I said this before. I said something wasn't popular, and again, this is, you know, shit from 12 years ago. People were like, what do you mean? Everybody loves the Beat on the Brat cover. What the fuck are you talking about? Nobody should like that cover. But like, you listen to Till I Die, and you're like, is this a Stompin' Tom Connors song? You know, and that's just in them to play that. Heaven is the Dust Between My, you know, Toes is a song I wouldn't excuse from anyone else. But what's the one in I'm trying to think. Like, yeah, like I See a Mansion in the Sky is so strange because it takes in those, you know, it takes the nursery rhymes and it twists them around and stuff. But I'll turn to the corpse of God and cry. I see a mansion in the sky. It's like the Voynich manuscript or something. It's like this unearthed tablet that still is really like, no matter how much folk there is or how much, you know, kind of comedy there is in the song, it still feels like a guy getting a little bit too close to you when you're trying to buy a takeaway and saying shit you don't want to think about, you know. And it's like, yeah, it's like trying to get into the mind of someone you never want to meet. And there is as much beauty in there as there is violence. And that's something you have to deal with. The idea that every single person you meet is no means no, in a way, right? Like, it's everyone as well as being no one. My name is Sean. That's how much I like No Means No. And if you want to support, I want to listen, you don't have to support, you don't have to. So I do a show called SFULTRA, right? Which is like, I read a science fiction book every 2 weeks. I don't like science fiction, but I'm not reading the books to make fun of them. I think that's a mistake, impression I've given people, but I'm trying to get into science fiction. So I read a science fiction book every 2 weeks and I talk about it. I say we, it's just me. It's like this. I've just started. And if you want to listen to it, all of the links are on patreon.com/SFUltra. If you want to back the podcast, you get a different show as well called Perfect Taste Forever that comes out every week. SFUltra does not come out. So if you want to turn it into a weekly podcast, you know, you're getting one piece of content a week, back it. There's only one tier to back it. And Perfect Taste Forever is just about whatever I care about this week, and will sound a lot like this. Now, I know I'm saying this to no one, but I feel like I just got this microphone recently and it was nice to talk into it. Thank you very much. If you're here, if by some mistake, if you've left it on because your dog needed to hear a human voice when you've gone out to the shops or whatever, and you happen to hear it coming back in, thank you so much for listening. And thank you to everyone involved for giving me the time to talk. And yeah, that's it. Listen more to the greatest band in the world. I think you'll enjoy it.